Look at the real data on longevity. What is making people live the longest? It is the absence of processed food. You need to master 3 things in your life. You need to master sleep, mobility, exercise needs to be non-negotiable, and you need to eat a whole food diet. If you look at what we feed kids in the morning, white bagels, Pop-Tarts, cereals, full of folic acid. The vast majority of people listening to this podcast right now are supplementing for the sake of supplementing. They are not supplementing for deficiency.
Gary Brecka, a human biologist and longevity expert, spent over 2 decades predicting mortality. Today, he's dedicating his life to helping people live healthier, longer, and more fulfilled lives. And now, he's brought the ultimate human to Dubai. Gary, welcome to Dubai. It's great to have you here.
I love this city. I love the whole country, but I really love this city.
How are you finding the energy and the 30-30 day fitness challenge and all the vibes at Kite Beach?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things about Dubai. You know, you have the tone set from the very top. You know, I actually saw a funny diagram of Sheikh Hamdan's original vision for this 30-30 event. And it was, you know, some circles drawn on a board. And the vision to get 30 minutes of exercise every day for 30 days and make it accessible for the entire city. And then to come and actually participate in it and see how well executed it was. You know, my media team and I joined the bike ride about 2 weeks ago. And it was one of the most unique, surreal experiences I've ever had because 8 lanes of highway closed. You know, it was first thing in the morning, right at daybreak. So you're cycling through the city and there's 5 lanes of highway in front of you. Nobody's crashing into each other. The sun's rising over the city. It was still dark enough that the Museum of the Future was still lit up. And I'm looking at this Museum of the Future, and the sun's coming up over the city. And, you know, it was a beautiful morning. And I said to my podcast manager, I said, you know, we should just really be present for this moment and take this in because this is not something you see anywhere else in the world. And the precision that they execute these events with is astounding. You know, they would hold people back in different on-ramps to the highway, and they would wait for a group of bikes to go by, and then they would load the next set of bikes from the back. The banners were along the side, they had music. I didn't see one bike wreck. There were kids, there were old people, young people. It's just a part of people's wellness journey that I think gets very forgotten is this sense of community, this sense of purpose. And to bring an entire city together with a common purpose of just getting out, moving your bodies, having some fun, creating that sense of community. It's been amazing.
I feel like we wait for this month every year. Like the 30-30 fitness challenge has been happening for a few years now. And everyone's like, yeah, like people who don't even work out or who don't have this energy or they just don't have it in them. They wait for it and they're like, you know what? Like we should get 30 minutes of fitness every single day. Mm-hmm. Like just movement, any type of movement.
Just the basics.
Exactly. Just to get your body moving, to feel better. I think it's great. I mean, and it encourages you. Like when you see other people doing it, it encourages you and makes you actually want to move your body.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of data on this too. You know, interestingly, if you really look at the Blue Zone studies, for example, there was no continuity between diets, right? It wasn't dogmatic dieting that extended life. It was the absence of processed food. But what was the real non-exchangeables, right? What were the 2 non-exchangeables in the big data for the people that are living the longest, the healthiest, the happiest lives? And it was sense of community and purpose and mobility into later in life. And so to combine those in a single event at scale, right? Massive scale, to have an entire city and people from all over the world that can participate safely and really enjoy it. I mean, that is going to move the needle more than anything you can do on the healthcare side to fix chronic disease and just keep people out of the system.
You brought the ultimate human to Dubai, you were telling us. What inspired you to choose Dubai as your next stop?
I really searched all over the world for a place to locate what I believe will be the world's most impactful functional medicine and longevity clinic. And in order to do that, you really need regulatory cooperation, you need the right piece of real estate, you need the right talent, you have to be able to draw very sought after talent, the right MDs, PhDs, researchers, and you have to bring them to a location where they feel safe, where they can earn a living, where they can practice freely. And Dubai was so inviting for us. I have a partner in that project called D43, and They're our financial partner, and I managed to have a private client that was one of the large shareholders there, and he really wanted to give back to the city, and I wanted to find a place in the world where I knew that the rest of the world would come for wellness and longevity. I truly believe that Dubai, if they continue to move in the direction that they are now, will be the wellness destination of the world, because you have something here that's extraordinarily unique. You have infrastructure, you have phenomenal hotels, you have phenomenal food, you have phenomenal people, and you most of all provide a safe environment. You know, right now the vast majority of this industry, very bifurcated. So if you live in the United States and you want to get certain stem cell or exosome treatments or natural killer cell immune therapies, you're going to Medellin, Colombia, you're going to Tijuana, you're going to Panama, you're going to Costa Rica. There's nothing wrong with any of those places, but they don't provide the level of infrastructure and safety. You know, sadly, there are cities in the world, many in the United States, where I wouldn't let my wife walk down the street at 10 p.m. by herself for 2 blocks.
Talking about safety, you know, being brought up here in Dubai, like safety to me is a norm. Like it's not something. So every time I leave or I go outside to Europe or anywhere
they're
else,
like, don't wear your watch. And you're like, hey, what do you mean don't wear my watch?
Please just take care on the streets. Like don't like hold your bag close next to you. I'm like, why is that like not normal? They're like, no, like people like
here. If you lose it, they find it and give it back to you. I mean, it's weird.
Exactly. And there are also videos like you just keep your phone, like if you want to have it, like reserve a table, you keep your phone or your stuff on the table and you just go and you come back and it's still there. Like it's like it's insane.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And our clinic is called the Ultimate Human Wellness Clinic, and it will provide some of the most evidence-based therapies that the regulatory environment hasn't quite caught up to.
Okay.
And the cooperation level that we've seen from the ministries and the health ministries and the regulatory environment is really second to none. Their first concern is for the safety of the people.
Yeah.
So they won't let charlatans and you know non-proven, non-evidence-based therapies here, which of course I agree with. But to the extent that they are evidence-based, they're backed by real science and they have real data behind them. They're very open to discussing widening the lanes to allow access to these things. And that, to me, the curiosity that I feel from the powers to be here is almost childlike. You know, it's really endearing to me.
What would you say your vision is for the wellness culture in this region?
It's to fit in with the culture and provide a destination wellness location where people can access the most advanced therapies for wellness and longevity. You know, I know we're going to talk about this later in the podcast, but the stages that people go through on their wellness journey, right? They're beginning with the basics, right? I always say that, you know, when people ask me, what's your favorite modality for biohacking? You know, what's your favorite supplement? And the truth is that before you even start asking those questions, you need to master 3 things in your life. And all of the data supports this. You need to master sleep. You need to master mobility. Exercise needs to be non-negotiable. And you need to eat a whole food diet. You need to eat a diet absent processed foods. If you look at the real data on longevity, what is making people live the longest? It's not the carnivore diet. It's not the keto diet. It's not the paleo diet. It's not the pescatarian diet, not the vegan, not the vegetarian, not the raw food. It's not dogmatic dieting. It is the absence of processed food. And here you have access to high quality food. And second, you need to become a master of sleep, because sleep is our human superpower. Yeah. It is the foundation of how our brain eliminates waste. It's the foundation of how we assemble memory. It is the foundation of how we have sharp, clean, clear focus and great waking energy. And you need to master mobility. And mobility, exercise, needs to be non-negotiable, which is why I'm such a fan of His Highness Sheikh Hamdan's vision for this 30-30, right? It's not elaborate. It's just the basics. And then as you move along your wellness journey, we're able to bring science that is right now 25 years in the future into the present day and provide services like blood filtration, stem cells, exosomes, natural killer cell treatments for cancer that don't involve chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery, so that we can get back to what God gave us and not towards what man makes us. You know, the truth is that longevity is found in harnessing what we get from God and from Mother Nature, not from chemicals, synthetics, and pharmaceuticals. They have a role, and I'm not anti-pharma, and I'm certainly not anti-modern medicine. It's saved a lot of lives, including my own. And we need to get back to what God gave us, believing in the body's ability to heal itself, believing in the ability to harness the body's capacity to heal and to thrive. And so this longevity clinic will offer some of the most advanced therapeutics that the world has ever seen that are right now in a very patchwork around the world. And when you look at Dubai, I think it's within 7 or 8 hours, you have 2/3 of the world's population, 7 to 8 hour flight. You have 2/3 of the world's population. And that draw to seek true longevity medicine was the reason why we chose Dubai, and that's what we'll offer in the clinic.
You spoke about sleep and about food, and we never realize really what we're eating or what we're consuming.
Mm-hmm.
Just all the ingredients, the chemicals that they put in everything. I'm just like, how do we consume these?
Yeah.
And then I come here and I actually tell my colleagues and everyone, I'm just like, guys, you don't know what we're consuming. Like,
so true.
Like even protein bars and all of these, just to give you like the easiest or the simplest example, like protein bars has 20 grams of protein. Oh yeah, let's substitute it with a normal candy bar or like a chocolate bar. But the ingredients, the 20, 30, list of ingredients that it
so
has.
True. What's very interesting, I got asked a very interesting question on a stage talk not too long ago, and I thought it was one of the most thought-provoking questions I'd ever been asked. And someone said, if you were to put the top 50 anti-aging, longevity, biooptimization experts in a room and ask them to agree on one theory of aging, just one, what would that be? And I thought about that for a minute, and I said, we would probably all agree. In fact, I know we would all agree on the theory of something called immunofatigue. Okay. This is a slow, progressive overwhelming of the immune system. So when we're an infant till about age 13, the vast majority of the time, our immune system is not spending its time protecting us. It is spending its time policing us. It's actually policing our inside environment, inside the castle walls. So for example, as we get older, we have cells in the body, cellular structures in the body that can no longer perform their function, but they're still alive. These are called senescent cells. And you have red blood cells that can no longer carry oxygen. You have white blood cells that can't mount an immune defense. You have platelets that can't carry healing growth factors. And these start to take up more and more space in our bloodstream. We also slowly microdose ourselves with toxins over time. There's a saying that the dosage determines the poison. I disagree with that. I believe that the cumulative dosage determines the poison. Nobody got mercury poisoning from eating a single piece of tuna fish. What they got mercury poisoning from was microdosing with mercury over a long period of time. And if you look at our modern lifestyle, glyphosate, which is an insecticide, pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals, parasites, viruses, mold, mycotoxins, food dyes, all of these things start to stack up. And our immune system is so busy trying to protect us from all of this stuff. This is when disease sets in. A circulating tumor cell, which is cancer at stage 0, slips by. And normally this would be a walk in the park for the immune system. But a weakened, distracted immune system lets these things happen. So for example, if you went inside the cell of every human being in this earth and you found the nucleus, which is where the DNA lives, 40% of every DNA strand in our body is not human. It is viral. So only 60% of our DNA, yours, mine, everybody listening to this podcast, only 60% of our DNA is human. Wow. 40% of our DNA is viral. This is how we know that you had mono when you were 8 years old and you might get Epstein-Barr as an adult. This is how we know that you had chickenpox as a child and maybe you will get shingles as an adult. You didn't catch shingles. You didn't catch Epstein-Barr. You've always had them. What protected you from having those viruses was your immune system. And so the immune system unlocks a special gateway to longevity because it is so innately intelligent that if we can strengthen it, if we can heal it, if we can repair it, and we can support it, if you're alive 5 years from today, it will be your choice whether or not you want to live to age 120 or 140. These are the kinds of services we're going to offer in the Ultimate Human Wellness Clinic. There are other clinics that are offering these too. They're not just germane to us, but this is where science has gone. And it's really fascinating to me because it has come back to the basics. We realize how intelligent our ancestors really were. Like a great rule of thumb is, if your great grandmother wouldn't recognize it, don't eat it, right?
True.
They pickled vegetables, and they went to the garden every day. They probably shopped 4 or 5 times or 6 times a week, not once every 2 weeks. And so, convenience has taken priority over our biological health.
When you created the Ultimate Human, what was the message you wanted to tell people?
For 20 years of my life, I was in mortality science, what's called probabilistic modeling for mortality. And essentially the industry that I was in, if we got 10 years of medical records on you and 10 years of demographic data, we could tell the insurance company how long you had to live to the month.
Wow.
And this seems like a fallacy, but it's actually some of the most accurate science in the world. You see, when you know the day, the date, the time, the location, and the cause of death for hundreds of millions of lives, you can pull that back into the record and you can say, what was it that caused these people to not live healthier, happier, longer, more fulfilling lives? And I can tell you emphatically that the reason why the vast majority of people are not living long, healthy, happy lives are for what we called modifiable risk factors. Okay. Mainly dietary and lifestyle and supplement changes that, if you were to make these subtle changes, would dramatically extend not just your lifespan, but your health span. And so I had an epiphany one day that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life researching death. I wanted to help people live healthier, happier, longer lives. I remember the day that I came home and told at the time she was my girlfriend, then my fiance, now my wife, so it worked out. big shout out to my wife, Sage. Told her that I quit my job and I wanted to start a wellness clinic. This was about 11 years ago. Wow. And by the grace of God, that clinic took off and did very well. And I decided that the Ultimate Human was going to be born for one reason. I got my team together and I said, we are going to build a media platform, a podcast, stage talks, interviews, newsletters, challenges. We're going to write what we call evergreens, guides on how to do breath work, how to do cold plunging, how to do a 3-day water fast, how do you hack your sleep, how do you hack your travel, what are the best ways to hack travel, what are the most evidence-based morning routines to extend life. And we are going to give without the expectation of receipt. All this media platform is designed to do is to give this information to humanity without the expectation of receipt. And it was a really difficult concept initially because any business wants to put it behind a paywall. You want an affiliate link, you want a discount code, you want, you want paid memberships, you want whatever it is. And we had to resist that. And we didn't measure our success by how big our Instagram account became. We didn't measure our success initially by our balance sheet. We measured it by the impact the message was having. And now it's the largest media platform in the world for wellness and longevity. It's been such a humbling journey to see this message resonate around the world. And, people are very confused about where do they start on their wellness journey. It's probably the most common question that I get asked. And the place that all people should start is you should get data on your body, because the vast majority of people listening to this podcast right now are supplementing for the sake of supplementing. Yeah. They are not supplementing for deficiency. So we believe this in plant physiology. So let's say you had a leaf rotting in, well, these are fake trees, so they're going to be around forever. Let's take a live tree. So let's say that you had a leaf rotting in one of the palm trees around here, and you called a true arborist, like a true botanist, out to look at that leaf. They wouldn't even touch the leaf. They would core test the soil, and they would say, you know what, there's no nitrogen in this soil. And then they would add nitrogen to the soil, and the leaf would heal. Oh. Human beings are no different. So the most important, critical thing for, I think, every human being to do once in their life is you do something called a genetic methylation test. I'm bringing this test to this region for that reason. The reason why you do this test once in your life is because your genes will never change. And just like the nitrogen missing from the soil, this test will tell you exactly what your body can bring in and convert into the usable form and what it can't. When you can't convert vitamins, minerals, amino acids, nutrients into the form the body can use, you have a deficiency. And this deficiency leads to the expression of disease. There are so many of your listeners right now that are walking around with anxiety. They've had it on and off throughout their lifetime. They can't point to the specific trigger that causes it. Medication makes them feel like a zombie, and they don't realize this is a nutrient deficiency. They have attention deficit disorder, and their mind is all over the place. And they think the way to quiet the mind is to take an amphetamine like Vyvanse, Ritalin, Adderall, and speed up the central nervous system. But the truth is, attention deficit disorder is not an attention deficit at all. It's an attention overload disorder. It's too many windows open at the same time. So the focus should be on quieting the mind. And the way that you quiet the mind is you take a specific set of supplements, usually a complex of B vitamins, something called methylfolate, something called methylcobalamin, and you give the body the raw material it needs to break down these thoughts. Because we don't just create thought in the human mind, we also break thought down. And if you break down thought at a slower rate than you create thought, the mind is clouded. And we call this an attention deficit, but it's actually an attention overload. And so there's so many of your listeners right now that go to bed tired, right? Their body tired. But as their environment quiets, their mind wakes up. So they'll lay in bed, body tired, but mind awake, just ruminating on the most innocuous nonsense, right? Did I get everything on my grocery list? Did my belt match my shoes today? Did I return that Instagram post? Nothing that couldn't wait till the next day. And these people are being unnecessarily robbed of deep sleep. There are a vast portion of your audience that either have been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease or mental illness or mood disorder, not realizing that very often these can be traced to nutrient deficiencies. And very often, not in all cases, but these are very easy to solve. If you want to see magic happen in human beings, you do a genetic methylation test, you supplement for deficiency, and give their body the raw material it needs to do its job, and you will see people thrive in ways they never imagined possible. So that was the foundation of the Ultimate Human, was to initially give without the expectation of receipt, but tell people precisely where to start their journey. You start with this test called the genetic methylation test, which I pray will be available within the next 30 days here in the UAE, in Dubai too. You supplement for deficiency. You find the nitrogen missing in the soil, and then look out. Focus, concentration, response to exercise, sleep returns, anxiety fades, your gut issues, fade in, permanently because people that have gas and bloating and diarrhea and constipation and irritability and cramping are searching for food allergies. They're searching for food sensitivities. They're measuring their gut microbiome, not realizing that the most important thing in the gut and the most overlooked thing in all of bariatric medicine is not the contents of the gut. It's not the bacteria are extraordinarily important. And it's not the food allergy or sensitivity. It's the pace of the gut. It's the speed of this conveyor belt. And you can restore this speed so that you are having regular bowel movements and you have a healthy gut. You can restore this speed by putting the right raw material back in the human body.
Well, I can definitely relate. Like I'm one of these people that you're talking about. Like I go to doctors and I tell them like I wake up and I feel exhausted already just from waking up. I had an 8-9 hour sleep. I wake up, I'm still tired. I mean, I go do some tests and then they tell me, oh, there's nothing wrong with your vitamins. And then they tell me, but still supplement. They just tell you to supplement on things.
But then you're supplementing for the sake of supplementing.
Exactly.
I mean, you could make an argument for ashwagandha, St. John's wort, CoQ10, resveratrol, curcumin, NAD, NMN, nicotinoid riboside. You could make an argument for all of these things. The question is, what does your body need? What's missing from the soil? If you didn't find the nitrogen, nothing else would have mattered. in that plant. You could have done plenty of things that are great for plants. You start watering it, leaf doesn't heal. You add sulfur, leaf doesn't heal. You add phosphorus, leaf doesn't heal. Nitrogen, and the plant heals. Human beings are no different. Yeah. And so the case that you're describing is what we call rumination. Yeah. Rumination, which means ruminating thoughts. And what this means is that your environment starts to quiet, and a class of neurotransmitters, they're called catecholamines, they begin to build in the brain. This creates a awakened state. These are also linked to the fight or flight response. Mm. Now, you're not having a full-blown fight or flight response, but most people that have this condition, which is about 40% of the world, when you have this condition, when you consider scenarios at night, you consider the worst case scenario. It's like my wife. If there's a knock at the door, definitely a murderer. It's like, this is the end.
We're getting killed today.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, it was room service. I forgot. I ordered. I'm like, okay, we need to reel that back. When you think about your relationship, it's worst case scenario. You think about your job, it's worst case scenario. And when you supplement for this deficiency, you fall peacefully to sleep because your mind is quiet, and you wake up refreshed, and you feel focused and concentrated. You can concentrate because you have actually harnessed the two most important phases of sleep. Most people know that sleep is important, but the question is why?
Exactly.
Yeah. What happens during sleep that's so critical? Well, there's a specific phase of sleep called REM sleep. REM sleep, yeah. And during REM sleep, this is when we are assembling memory. So this podcast, for example, let's say that your listeners learned something new on this podcast. That conscious learning that they did during the day, when they go to sleep tonight, during REM phase, it will be married with what's called their hippocampus, where we store memory. Mm. So the brain will actually create these connections to make a learned memory. So if you're not getting good REM sleep, you are not retaining information. You feel foggy. If you don't get deep sleep, this is when a very, very special system in the brain called the glymphatic system is active. So we have a lymphatic system in the body, right? And everybody knows your lymph nodes, right? Yeah. You get a sore throat. You get a sore throat and your lymph nodes swell. Yeah. And you have axillary lymph nodes. You have lymph nodes all over the body. Well, this system eliminates waste from the body. Okay. In the brain, this system is called the glymphatic system. Okay. And it is active mainly during deep sleep. Mm-hmm. So when you get deep sleep, your brain is throwing out the trash. It's eliminating waste. It's repairing. It's detoxifying. It's regenerating. So deep sleep is where the brain cleans itself. And by waste, I don't mean stool and urine. I mean cellular waste, histamines, cytokines, all of this cellular waste. Yeah. And because cells are like little children, they make a mess just in the process of daily living. And this accumulates in the brain. During deep sleep, we eliminate it. And this is why if you get a few nights of great sleep, you feel clear, focused, energized, awake. You have that clean sense of zen. That comes from your brain literally being clean and your memory being well assembled. So sleep is our human superpower. You cannot diet your way around poor sleep. You can't exercise your way around poor sleep. It's the foundation. We used to sleep and wake with the sun. We no longer do, right? We control our inside lighting. We control our air temperature. We control everything.
We close the windows. So what you're saying is that if we don't get enough sleep or we don't get deep quality sleep, then there's something wrong with us, definitely. There's something wrong. We are missing something. We are deficient in something.
And the truth is, most of us bully sleep around in in our life like a stepchild. It's terrible. 6 years ago, I decided that I would schedule all of my meetings and travel around sleep and exercise. I mean, the very first part of my day today, in fact, if you look at my calendar, I could show you on my phone, sleep and exercise are scheduled into my calendar. I don't take early morning flights. I don't take red eyes. I don't take early morning meetings. I don't take late night dinners. And I decided that sleep and exercise were my priorities. I cannot even begin to tell you what a game-changing shift that has made in my life.
Don't know how important sleep is, honestly. It's crazy. You said disease doesn't happen to us, it happens within us. Can you elaborate a bit on that? What do you mean by this?
This is very true. So, for example, if you look at cancer, all cancer, regardless of its form or its origin, was at one time a healthy cell. So what happened was a healthy cell shifted its metabolism and became metabolically sick.
Yeah.
Now, the part of this cycle that I disagree with is that we believe that healthy cells can become metabolically sick. For some reason, we do not believe that metabolically sick cells can become healthy. I find that to be patently false, and the evidence proves that too. So the vast majority of things are happening within us. They are not happening to us.
Yeah.
So for example, if you take depression, we define depression, at least in the United States, we define it as an inadequate supply of serotonin. So if you are low on the neurotransmitter serotonin, you're by definition depressed.
Yeah.
So we think, what's happened in our outside environment to cause the depression? But if we define depression as low serotonin, then you would think that the fix would be to raise serotonin. But that's actually not what we do. What we do is we put people that are low on serotonin on something called an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And what this does is it just rations what little serotonin they have.
Okay.
So by definition, it never raises serotonin. So by definition, it never ends depression. But if we look inside the body and we say, well, where is serotonin made? Where's the factory for serotonin? It's in the gut. 90% of the serotonin in your body is right here. If you don't have it here, you can't have it here. And so if we took it a step further and said, well, what is the factory that makes serotonin make it from? It's made from an amino acid called tryptophan.
Okay.
So we convert an essential amino acid called tryptophan into the neurotransmitter serotonin in our gut. If this conversion is broken, we have a deficiency. And that deficiency leads to the expression of the condition depression. It is the same with dopamine. We make dopamine from several amino acids, phenylalanine, tyrosine, and we convert these amino acids into this neurotransmitter dopamine. Well, dopamine is the main driver of mood. If you don't have dopamine, you will engage in dopamine-seeking behavior. What does that mean? Thrill-seeking, promiscuity, workaholic, work-outaholic, drugs, alcohol, nicotine. Not because you are looking for high, because you are searching for normalcy. Most addicts, true addicts, did not wake up one day and say, I want to get really banged up, right? They woke up one day and said, I want to feel normal.
Exactly.
And it was the search for normalcy where they developed an addiction. And the vast majority of these people, which I have a lot of empathy for, are running from a low. They're not running towards a high. And so this, if we go back into our human physiology, and this is why I say these things happen within us, this is a deficiency. Why don't we fix the dopamine pump? Why don't we fix the serotonin pump? Why don't we break down catecholamines so we don't suffer from anxiety? Why don't we quiet the mind by breaking down neurotransmitters so we don't have to deal with ADHD? Why don't we shut the mind and the thoughts off at night so we can get deep sleep? And these are nutrients that you can put into the body. After doing a test, you find out what your body can convert and what it can't. And then when you target those nutrients, the body turns right back on. Because we're not pathological, we're not diseased, we are nutrient deficient. If you look at the classes, major categories of disease, take something like hypertension or autoimmune. Well, about 85% of all autoimmune diseases, regardless of whether it's Crohn's or Sjogren's or Hashimoto's or multiple sclerosis or lupus or any number of other autoimmune diseases, these are idiopathic. They are of unknown origin. So our assumption is the immune system has made a mistake. We need to hold the immune system responsible for this. Immunosuppressants, corticosteroids, anti-inflammatories, instead of saying, what if the immune system didn't make a mistake? What if it is attacking that tissue for a reason? We just need to find out why. And it's just reframing the way that we look at pathology, the way that we look at disease. If you think of the simple fact that we have 32 trillion cells in the human body, roughly.
Yeah.
I haven't counted them. But,
Not yet.
but that's what they say, about 32 trillion cells. And every day that you're alive, 300 billion cells that were with you yesterday will not be with you today. Tomorrow, 300 billion cells that were with you today will not be with you tomorrow. Which means that about every 84 days, nearly every live cellular structure in the body turns over, right? Not precisely that, but about every 84 days.
Yeah.
So if you sat in front of me 84 days from today, you would literally be an entirely different woman, right? Right down to your skin cells, everything. So why do we not believe during that period of that much cellular turnover that we cannot heal from anything that faces us? The question is, what frequency are you sending those cells? What nutrition are you giving those cells? What environment are you bathing those cells in? And if we paid attention to that, you would see what's referred to as miraculous cures become commonplace.
You conduct almost 20,000 tests, you were telling us the other day.
A month, yeah. At the height when I've exited my previous clinic in the United States. But, at our height, we were doing 20,000 new genetic tests a month. So we have an enormous amount of data, right, on what supplements fix what ailments and what deficiencies lead to what conditions. So many of your listeners right now have accepted things as a consequence of aging that are not a consequence of aging. They are a consequence of missing raw material. There's so many of your listeners that have brain fog, water retention, hormone imbalance, poor sleep, poor focus, poor concentration. They don't have the same response to exercise. They've lost their libido, and they think something's happened to them. Something has happened within you. A deficiency has begun to occur that is causing the expression of this condition.
And what would you say are the most common deficiencies that you've witnessed after conducting these tests?
Well, about 46% of the world's population has a gene mutation called MTHFR.
Okay.
MTHFR. I won't tell you what the nickname is for that because I don't want to cuss on your podcast. But MTHFR is one of the most common nutrient deficient or gene mutations in the world. MTHFR impairs or blocks the ability for that person to use folic acid and folate. So, and convert folic acid into the form the body can use, which is called methylfolate, which causes a deficiency in methylfolate. Now, this doesn't sound like a big deal until you realize that folic acid is the most prevalent nutrient in the human diet. And folic acid is an entirely man-made chemical. You cannot find folic acid anywhere on the surface of the earth. Folic acid does not occur naturally in nature. Folate does, but folic acid does not occur naturally in nature. So what happens when you put this compound into the body and you can't convert it? Number one, folic acid skyrockets because you can't break it down. And number two, you have a deficiency in methylfolate. This happens very often to pregnant women. What's the first thing your OBGYN tells you when you get pregnant? Take high doses of folic acid because they say folic acid prevents a neural tube defect. That is patently false. Folic acid doesn't prevent anything until it is converted into methylfolate. So if you can't make this conversion, all the folic acid in the world is useless for you. If you don't know you have this gene mutation, then you don't know that you need to supplement with methylfolate. I mean, though the vast majority of women, in my opinion, that suffer from postpartum depression, if you look at the sequence of, which begins during pregnancy, by the way, even though it's called postpartum depression, it starts with the onset of the prenatal vitamin. Because if you take a woman that has this gene mutation and you give her 1,800 or 1,900% of the daily allowance of folic acid, she will go nuts and she will have depression. And what happens is the pregnancy ends, they stop taking the prenatal vitamin, the symptoms go away, so they blame it on the pregnancy, not on the vitamin. And I've seen this happen thousands and thousands and thousands of times. Anyone that takes, issue with that, I'd be happy to share the data with you. If you put these women on methylfolate, none of this would happen, right? So the body has nutrients that it uses in the format that it can absorb. So my suggestion to your audience is if you're going to take a multivitamin, like I have a multivitamin that I formulated over the years, make sure that it is a methylated multivitamin. That term methylated is very important. So you ask what the these deficiencies are. They're methylfolate, the complex of B vitamins. Believe it or not, we are B vitamin deficient. riboflavin, thiamine, niacin, pantothenic acid, something called pyridoxal 5-phosphate. These are fancy names for B vitamins. A special form of B12 called methylcobalamin. Those alone are amazing. If you have hypertension that's been diagnosed as unknown origin, I would consider looking at your homocysteine levels and taking something called trimethylglycine. So nutrients restore the body's ability to heal and protect itself and to thrive. But those are the major ones.
Folic acid, if it's not converted basically to methylfolate, then we have an issue.
We have an issue.
And most people are actually deficient in that, in methylfolate.
Most people are deficient in methylfolate because 46% of the population has the gene mutation I mentioned called MTHFR. You know, in the United States, in around 1993, we began to spray all of our grains, all flour, all pasta, all rice, cereals of any kind. We began to spray it with this chemical folic acid. Okay, it's called fortified or enriched. Okay. So if you are eating fortified or enriched foods, folic acid has been added, sprayed on those foods. Okay. So now imagine that you have this gene mutation, but you haven't done this test. You don't know that you have it. And you're eating all these fortified or enriched foods. And you don't know why your children, it's a full contact sport to get them in the car to go to school in the morning. You don't know why little Johnny or Susie can't pay attention. They don't follow directions. They are disruptive. They have an impulse control. It's because their little bodies cannot process this nutrient. If you look at what we feed kids in the morning, white bagels, Pop-Tarts, cereals, full of folic acid. When children have this gene mutation, it is a stimulant to their brain. Their brain starts to ricochet, and they can't pay attention. There's too many thoughts going on in their head. And then we say, we need to bring in the Ritalin, or the Adderall to solve this. When the truth is, we need to get the folic acid out of their diet and put the methylfolate in, and you'll have a completely different child in the house. I mean, if you're a parent and you're listening to this, try that for 7 days. If you have a child that has ADD or ADHD, or I won't say learning disability, but has a hard time following directions or paying attention or sitting for periods of time, or they're disruptive, or they have impulse control issues, for 1 week, 7 days, Sunday to Sunday, get all of the folic acid out of their diet. Get all of the fortified or enriched foods out of their diet. Supplement them with methylfolate and the B complex. And you're going to call me in a week and thank me because you're going to have a completely different child in the house.
Let's not talk about the kids and the mothers. I'm going to start doing this myself.
Yeah, forget the kids.
I'm going to start supplementing myself because I feel like already I'm missing out on a lot of these vitamins and
this is why I was so intentional about bringing this test to the UAE and to Dubai. And I've had so much cooperation from the health authorities because this is a simple place that all humanity should start their wellness journey. What is my deficiency that I will never be able to fix because I have a gene mutation? What do I need to supplement with to fix this deficiency? And then you can begin your wellness journey.
We've talked a lot about cold plunges and red light therapy. What actually matters most for living longer? What's your intake on this?
As I mentioned before, the 3 basics, sleep, mobility, and whole food diet, that matters the most. The second thing, before you start talking about modalities, is we have to talk about sense of community and purpose because these were non-exchangeable. I put faith into that category and not any specific type of faith, but having faith. There is a tremendous impact that comes to our human physiology from prayer, by getting on your knees and succumbing to a higher power, by being humble and grateful, by believing that there is a power that is higher than and above us. This is very good for our cellular biology. Also, the most damaging thing for human beings, and we knew this from vast studies in the mortality space. If you want to cut a human being's life expectancy in half, and I mean in half, at any age, you put them in isolation. We believe that connection comes through social media and our phones, and that we're connected more because we're in this digital connection. We are the most isolated we have ever been in society. And this is why I love this project I was telling you about, 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐿. I don't have any affiliation with them, creating community, sense of purpose, sense of connection. what 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭 is doing with the 30-30
Yeah.
to bring the community together around a common purpose. You know how many smiles I saw? You know how many like kids and parents were out there? It's hard to not be in a good mood when you're on a bike, you know, in the whole city. And so,
Okay, yeah.
so sense of community and purpose, faith is extraordinarily important. And then I would say, if you want to talk about modalities, if I was to only have one, it would probably be a cold plunge.
Okay.
Second would be a red light therapy bed, then a sauna, and then something like a hyperbaric chamber. And the reason for this is what these are doing is tapping into the body's ability to heal, eliminate waste, and strengthen itself. So if you think about what happens when you get into a cold plunge, and first of all, just to set the stage, colder is not better and longer is not better.
Okay.
You'll have to convert this to Celsius, but about 52 to 58 degrees Fahrenheit, whatever that is in Celsius. I'll ask ChatGPT. But whatever 52 to 58 degrees Fahrenheit is, a lot warmer than you think. 3 minutes minimum, 6 minutes maximum. Because what happens when you get into cold water, because water is 29 times more thermogenic than air, meaning it removes heat from the body at 29 times the rate of air. You can die in 72 degree water, Fahrenheit. You cannot die in 72 degree air. Okay, so when you get into cold water, immediately you get a peripheral vasoconstriction. But it doesn't just randomly constrict your vessels. It shuttles the blood to the brain, the heart, and the lungs.
Okay.
Then you activate something called brown fat. Brown fat is not the white fat that we see. It's brown fat. This exchanges a calorie for a measure of heat. It actually turns a calorie into a measure of heat. Actually, the definition of a calorie is a measure of heat.
Yeah.
Then it releases something phenomenal called cold shock proteins.
Okay.
You want to have some fun, just Google around about cold shock proteins. These are amazing. They are released from the liver. They flood the bloodstream. These are linked to improved insulin sensitivity, improved mood, improved vascular laxity, improves the integrity of the blood vessel. There's some of these that are being studied like LIN28A and LIN28B to actually reduce insulin resistance and improve insulin sensitivity. Then you get a dump of dopamine and a neurotransmitter called norepinephrine. And what this does is it makes you feel awake and clear and focused and concentrated. You can be in a bad mood going into a cold plunge. You can't be in a bad mood getting out. You just can't.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And you can tap into this stress response, which is called a hormetic stress. You can tap into this stress response every single day for free. And if you don't have the money for a cold plunge, take Tupperware containers, fill them full of water, put them in your freezer, and take big blocks of ice and put them in your bathtub. You'll have a cold plunge for 3 days. Start with cold showers. Sauna is another one of those that has an enormous body of evidence. You know, we've been using sauna for centuries.
Yeah.
We have tons of data on this. It reduces all-cause mortality. Why? Why does heating the body up reduce all-cause mortality? Well, for a number of reasons. You also release heat shock proteins, but more importantly, you eliminate waste. You eliminate cellular waste. Our skin is not just a barrier, it is a gateway. And we use the skin as a secondary route of waste elimination. So when you sweat, a lot of toxins from the body go out. So one of my favorite tips to tell people is that you should take a hand towel in the sauna with you and wipe yourself down while you're in the sauna. Okay. So as you sweat, wipe it off so that those pores don't resorb that waste that they've brought to the surface of the skin. Okay. You want to wipe it off and keep sweating. And so sauna is phenomenal. And red light therapy, I am a huge fan of. This is literally energy for your cells. It's like plugging your cells into a battery charger. Because, without getting too sciencey on your listeners, red light therapy restores an activity called vasomotor. So most people believe that the heart circulates all the blood in the body. It doesn't. It circulates about 30% of our blood. Most people think that our heart is beating and it's circulating all the blood in our body.
That's what I
it's
thought.
Not. It's actually only circulating 30% of our blood. So how is the rest of our circulation done? It's done by an activity called vasomotor. There's no pressure in these vessels. Think of a snake swallowing a mouse. Okay? We don't put a garden hose in the snake's mouth and push it along like we do in the other 30% of our arteries and veins. What happens is there's a muscular-like contraction moving the blood along. So vasomotor, which is 70% of our circulation, is microvascular. This is what supplies the back of our eyes, which is why most people start wearing readers in their 40s and their 50s. By the way, I'm 55. These are not readers. They're blue light glasses. They're not a prescription. I use these to block blue light.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, he talks about great eyesight and he's wearing glasses. Okay, so for the record, they're not prescription glasses. They're blue light. So what if we could treat this vasomotor circulation? This is what you do with red light. Red light also forces oxygen into a really vital part of the cell called the mitochondria. Kicks out a gas called mitochondrial nitric oxide, which is dissociated from cytochrome C oxidase, and then oxygen docks. And this is magic for our cells. So I think those three, sauna, cold plunge, red light, those are the modalities I'm extraordinarily fond of.
And you believe they're for everyone, because there's so much information that no one knows like what to believe anymore, you know? So this is good it's beneficial for every human, whether you're a woman or you're a man. It's
Cortisol response is not necessarily a bad response. You know what else increases cortisol? Sunlight. You know what else increases cortisol? Waking up in the morning. So cortisol is a very natural, very helpful, very necessary hormone in the human body. When you are chronically stressed and your cortisol is elevated over a prolonged period of time, this is not good for you. But a hormetic stress is a stress you apply to the body where it strengthens in response. You can make the same argument about exercise. It raises your blood pressure. It also damages your muscles.
True.
What do your muscles do in response? They strengthen. What happens if you load a bone? It gets stronger. What happens if you challenge the immune system? It strengthens. So, one of the worst things we ever did to humanity globally was residential quarantining, masking, social distancing, because we took human beings out of contact with other human beings and we weakened the immune system, right? So coming out of the pandemic, what did you have? Monkeypox. Well, what the heck is monkeypox, right? I never heard of that. Well, it's been around forever. Nobody got it because our immune system just fought it off without a problem. But when you weaken the immune system, you're susceptible to these things.
What would you say are like the 5 things that everyone should do on a daily basis to live longer and perform better?
So, well, we could talk about supplements or we could talk about lifestyle. I mean, lifestyle-wise, I go back to the same 3. Sleep, whole food diet, make exercise non-negotiable. What's fascinating is this is especially difficult for some reason for women.
Yeah.
If you look at autoimmune disease, for example, as a category, 82% of all autoimmune disease is in females, in women. Well, why? The disease doesn't select women. It's because women have a tendency to develop something called caregiver syndrome. This is where they're constantly putting the needs of everybody else before the needs of themselves. They put their kids, their spouse, their career, their job, their coworkers, their girlfriends. Everything comes before them.
I agree.
So listen up, women. And I'm not picking on you. Men do this too. But the point is that self-care needs to be non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Okay. Do not think of self-care as selfish. The first 90 minutes of every day of my day belongs only to me. After that 90 minutes, I give the rest of my day away. Podcasts, stage talks, lectures, interviews, travel, my wife, my kids, my career, my company, my coworkers, my employees. I give the rest of my day away, but not until I've first given to myself. So that's critical. Supplement-wise, the vast majority of people are supplementing for the sake of supplementing. So how do you not do that? I really encourage you once in your life to do a genetic methylation test. Once you do this test, you will never guess again for the rest of your life on what your body's deficient in.
And finally, what does it mean? What does being an ultimate human mean to you?
This is so weird.
Yeah,
okay. And I'll tell you why, because I ask that question to every one of my podcast guests and no one's ever asked me that.
Really?
That is the exact question and I'm not prepared to answer it. And I'm so mad that you asked me that because I own the Ultimate Human podcast. I should be able to answer this question.
Exactly.
Right? And I've heard hundreds of guests answer it. But if I would say, what does being an ultimate human mean to me? It means that you have found God's purpose for you, and you have been fortunate enough to align that with your passion. When your passion and your purpose converge, my father said to me a long time ago, if you want to shrink your problems, grow your purpose. The larger your purpose, the smaller problems become in our life. The challenge is that most of us don't know what our purpose is. We don't know what God's calling for us is. We don't know what our purpose on this earth is. And I believe if you don't know that, you can very often find your purpose in your pain. Some of the most impactful human beings I've ever met, that I've ever interviewed, that I've ever had on my podcast, have been people that solved a major problem in their life. These soccer moms that had a kid with autism, and just went down the rabbit hole of becoming a citizen scientist and fixed it. You know, people that suffer from chronic Lyme disease, maybe it was drug and alcohol addiction, maybe it was a bad relationship, but they walked straight into this problem and they solved it. And now I'm getting goosebumps telling you this.
Wow.
These are the most purpose-filled, passionate, driven, impactful people in the world. And you don't have to have a big media platform to be this person. You can do it within your own family. But I believe when your purpose and your passion converge, you're an ultimate human.
I love it. Honestly, I want to tell you something because I heard about it, and I didn't ask you about intermittent fasting per se, but I wanted to tell you that I used to always do that. And after I heard your podcast and you were talking about how we should get tests done and we should get our hemoglobin A1C levels checked. And then if you have it less than 5 or 5.2, then you're not a candidate for intermittent fasting. And then I realized my hemoglobin levels were 4.
Oh my gosh. You are not a candidate for intermittent fasting.
And I used to do that, and I work out so much, and I go to the gym, and I'm like, why am I not losing weight? Why am I like always? I have this like my friends would tell me like you should have like no fat whatsoever in your body by now, because like I'm always working out, I'm eating healthy, but I'm doing intermittent fasting, and then I just realized I'm not giving my body sufficient, like nutrition to like.
It's so true. Some of the worst endocrine disasters I have ever seen are in young menstruating women that still have their period, that eat in too narrow a feeding window. Because usually what happens is couples start this journey together, right? So they're both like, okay, let's start intermittent fasting.
Exactly.
Husband's killing it. He's getting jacked, sleeping like a bear, eating whatever he wants in his fasting window, got the energy of 10 men. And the wife is like, I'm getting bloated. I got water retention. I got brain fog. I got bags under my eyes. Like, what is going on? Because, just a quick physiologic explanation for that. When you reduce your caloric intake too low, and even if you keep your caloric intake where it needs to be, but you don't eat for prolonged periods of time, and you become hypoglycemic, too low on blood sugar, what happens is the pituitary gland, which is the master puppeteer in the body, it's running your menstrual cycle, it's running men's testosterone, it's running your metabolism, it's regulating your body temperature, it's running your sleep-wake cycle. The pituitary is running the show. The pituitary will perceive this as starvation, and it will begin to throttle back your metabolism. There is nothing more torturous to a woman than to have her eating less, working out more, eating so clean, being so focused on her diet and her exercise, and gaining weight.
Exactly.
And she's not getting fat, she's retaining water. This is why I tell anyone that works out in a fasted state, there are a few supplements I'm an enormous fan of. The greatest discovery, I believe, of our entire millennia are hydrogen tablets, hydrogen water, because hydrogen is the smallest, lightest element in the universe. It can go anywhere in the body. It is the only selective antioxidant that we know of, meaning it selectively goes into the body and takes the worst antioxidants to zero and takes the other oxidative stressors and puts them back into balance. It does not over suppress them. So for about $1 or so a day, you can take an elemental magnesium tablet. You can drop it into water. It will effervesce into pure hydrogen gas, and you can drink that. And it will collapse the inflammation in the body, improve the circulation, turn the lights on upstairs. It will improve your response to exercise. If you're an athlete, this will actually push off something called your lactate threshold and allow you to exercise harder for longer and perform better. It improves cognitive function, improves methylation. I think as a single nutrient, these elemental magnesium tablets are, I think, the greatest discovery of our millennia. and the one I take is called H2 tab, like H2, like hydrogen, and the word tab. Also, women especially should be taking essential amino acids. The reason why I say that is there are 9 essential amino acids. It's very hard for women to reach their protein equivalent without going over their macros, meaning without eating too much. So, because they say you need 1 gram of protein for every kilogram of body weight. It's difficult to get there, right? Yeah. Women are not going to sit down and eat 6 eggs and
it's really hard,
a ribeye steak, right? two fillets of salmon. So, but by taking the essential amino acids, you get the equivalent of 29 grams of whey protein with 0 calories. I take one called Perfect Amino. It's the perfect blend of amino acids, and it's all 9 essential amino acids. So if you're listening to this and you work out in a fasted state, you need to take hydrogen tablets and perfect amino acids, and you will see a game-changing shift in your physiology.
I'm starting.
And I didn't come here to sell you supplements, but I just think very often people are like, what is the thing that I need to take to solve that? So those are the things.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting you and speaking to you today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you inviting me. You're so easy to talk to, except that you asked me my own question, which I was like, how dare you? So I hope you like the answer. I wanted to ask you
that. I wanted to see your perspective on it.
I should have been able to answer it, but thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.